I'm Fred Wooden. I'm your interim minister here. Not only to you who are members, but to the wider community. As you can tell, I am standing outside our sanctuary because it really is a sanctuary for those in our wider community who have been living here for several months. And so we are sharing the space with them as we bring worship to you this morning. As someone else has observed, it is the cusp of the winter solstice, the moment when the sun lies lowest and closest to the horizon. Ancient people tried to implore the sun to come back, which may be the oldest form of worship we know. And while we know the sun will come back, the act of reaching out endures. In our bones, we know this still matters. So we are here each week, not just at the corners of the year, to revere the vastness around us and the affection between us. To remind you also that as I stand here, that we will be on this portico again on Thursday for those who are helping us celebrate Christmas Eve service at 5 p.m. And there is room for about 10 more people who wish to join us at a socially distanced, heavily masked, but nonetheless live service that we will be broadcasting to everyone. If you're still interested in coming, send me some email at minister@vuu.org. You can be a guest then, but you're always a guest when you tune in. And as always, there are always 3 unseen guests at every worship service: faith, hope, and love. We've lifted one up each week in this Advent season. This morning we lift up love. And so now I turn to our processional music, Joy to the World. Rebecca, did you want to introduce that?
I think this music speaks for itself as one of our favorite Christmas carols.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Haley. I'm the Faith Formation Assistant here at Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. For today's announcements, to make a Christmas Eve worship special, submit a picture of your family lighting a candle or holding a candle. You can send your picture to Blake Hyman. His email is blakehyman@gmail.com. And of course, I'll make sure to add that in the chat as well. To help us move beyond our last ministry and to prepare a new and different ministry, the transition team is asking to share memories of VUU. What brought you here? What kept you here? How did this become your congregational family? What can you tell us about a significant time in your congregation's history? And what are your most vivid personal memories of events at VUU? You can send your story, written, audio, or video to history@vuu.org. You will be given an option to join a breakout room at the end of service today, and the discussion prompt will be, do you have a star to steer by? If you're new to VUU, you may choose to decline the breakout room offer and stay in the large group with Reverend Wooden. And as you can see on the screen here, our pastoral care team is ready to be a listening ear. You can contact pastoralcare@vuu.org if you'd like to connect with someone.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Riggs, and I'm serving as the worship associate this morning. I'm so glad to see your faces, and my Christmas wish is that you feel our connection, even if we are only gathering virtually. I hope this morning's service will speak to each of you on some level, no matter your age, your background, or if you're new to us here at Valley UU or have been coming for a long time. Please know you are welcome here. And to any visitors this morning, I want to extend a special welcome. Although it's hard to connect meaningfully over Zoom, we do ask that at the end of this service, as Haley mentioned, when we go to breakout rooms, new members can, or new visitors can stay and visit with Reverend Wooden and myself. Now for everyone, bring all that you are, all that you hope for, and all that you love into this hour. Please join me as I light our flame by saying together our chalice lighting words. We kindle this flame, symbol of our faith, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of love, which calls us to work for justice. When I first started thinking about this welcome for the service that was focusing on stars, I was going to do some research into the explanations there are for the Christmas star and try to find some insights to share with you. Well, then I thought, no, I would rather share some stories from when I taught astronomy to high school freshmen, when I had very little training in the subject myself. But I soon gave up on both of those ideas. And then I looked at some pictures of the universe from the Hubble spacecraft with my granddaughters, and that did it. It was like the stars were ministering to me, offering me a gift. My granddaughters and I talked about how the stars are always there, even on cloudy nights and even in the day when the sun is shining and they can't see them. Always there. It's like a gift of their steady presence. Children and the child within us all love to draw them, sing about them, wonder what they are, make wishes on the first one they see at night. You remember? Starlight, star bright. First star I see tonight, wish I may, wish I might, grant the wish I wish tonight. And so it is. From our first moment on earth until we draw our last breath, they are there for us, cradling us underneath them. And then I tried to explain to a 4- and 7-year-old that we come from the stars, that the stuff of us is the same stuff of the stars. I'll have to try to have that conversation again when they're older and have a better concept of atoms. But we humans, especially now, need reassurance about the nature of our being. Knowing our atoms came from the stars offers me such reassurance. Asserting that despite the wars we visit on each other with sickening regularity, despite the unending evolution of ways we create to make one another's lives miserable, we are, in fact, a spark in the dark. We do embody all that is bright and alive, twinkling and dancing, because we are stardust. And someday in the not too distant future, I think my granddaughters may need to hear about how the stars at night can teach us about humility. The humility we learn from stars is, at least in part, the humility of perspective. I used to have a poster in my classroom with a very large photo of the Milky Way galaxy in all its mystery and beauty. And to one side, a little arrow pointed in the midst of the galaxy to a tiny, tiny little dot with the text next to it, "You are here." When we see our egos in the context of such a scale, they seem microscopic indeed. So beyond our lives of business cycles and election cycles and other ephemeral headlines, I believe we human beings remain creatures hungry for a sense of the infinite. And for me at least, it is satisfying to know that we live in the star-filled Milky Way. And in some important sense, the Milky Way, and maybe even the Christmas star, in all its brilliance, also lives in us. So for me and my granddaughters, enjoy that star at the top of your Christmas tree this evening, and then go outside and feel the expansion of your mind and your heart in the vista of the starry night sky. And thank you again for being here. Welcome. Please sing along to our opening song, or just listen if you'd rather. We have an ensemble of VUU singers, including Jill Kaligi, Jim Nielsen, and Noel Hyman, leading us in that familiar carol, The First Noel, where they looked up and saw a star. Please join.
Love the Star is my theme this morning. It's the third of 3 sermons, all gathered around a single hymn that we'll be singing at the end. And I mention it now because what could be less connected than love and money? Except perhaps the love of money, which we know is the root of all evil. But if I use the word treasure instead of money, things do change a bit. To treasure is to hold something as precious. If money is what we value, then perhaps we are not treasuring the right thing. So, is money what we treasure, or is it something beyond that? I think you know the answer. The only question left is the extent to which you are able and willing to exchange the one thing, money, for the other, which is this community. Well, I'm not going to tell you how much, but I can say you should do it. Because when you turn money into community, you more than double your investment. I'm going to do the time for all ages this morning because I'm going to read to you my favorite Christmas children's book. I'll show it to you. How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss. But I have to get in the mood first. So I put on my humbug hat. Can you see it? There you go. I think it's right there. And I make sure you see my Grinch tie. All right. So I'm putting on my Grinch this morning. It's not my best look, but it'll do. All right, Blake, shall we get started? How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all might have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there in Christmas Eve, hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, Grinchy frown at the warm, lighted windows below in their town, for he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. They're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming, I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. Then he got an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. James, I know just what to do. The Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat, and he chuckled and clucked. What a great Grinchy trick! With this coat and this hat, I look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max. Then he took some red thread and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some empty old sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, get up. And the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Whos lay a snooze in their town. All the windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the Whos were all dreaming sweet dreams without care when he came to the first little house on the square. This is stop number 1, old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two. Then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue where the little Whose stockings all hung in a row. These stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present: pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn, and plums, and he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimbley. Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out the icebox as quick as a flash. Why, the Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. And now, grinned the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. The last thing he took was the log for their fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 1/4 dawn, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a snooze when he packed up his sled. He packed it up with their presents, their ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings, 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet. He rode with the load to the tip top to dump it. Pooh, pooh to the Who's, he was grinchiously humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo. That's a noise, grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. And so he paused, and the Grinch put a hand to his ear, and he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, the sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry, very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food and the feast, and he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. And there ends the time for all ages.
As we go in to our centering time this morning, we begin with the music of a less well-known Christmas hymn. Whether you sing along or just let the music wash over you, I hope you feel its calming and hopeful message. Within the shining of a star, we catch a glimpse of who we are.
Within the shining of a star, we catch a glimpse of who we are. In every infant born we see the hope of our nativity, the miracle of each new birth can shake and save the
a time of prayer. I'm going to ask a favor of you now. At this time, and perhaps all the way through the message and the sermon, no chatting. Just listen to the words, the music, to your own heart. Just listen. Because you see, the offering and the prayer are where you, the people of this community, make this a service of worship. Without them, this is just a program, a presentation, even just entertainment. But with them, this hour is sanctified as worship. I happened upon an old essay by E.B. White this week. It's called, What Do Our Hearts Treasure? It was a gift long forgotten from my last reading, and it tells of celebrating Christmas in Florida instead of E.B. White's familiar Maine, and how it felt to be without the snow and without family. Sounds like something we would all benefit by reading, and I'm going to reread it again. But the title is what I suggest is worthy of your prayer for a moment today. What do our hearts treasure? Do you know? Ponder for a moment. What is it that your hearts treasure? And let's pause for a moment and see what answer comes up. Do you know why it is a treasure for you? What story or moment gave that thing a treasuring quality? Do you wonder why that moment, that story, comes forward among so many? What did it hold? Do you wonder, just wonder? Do you stop somewhere in the day and let go of time and place and just wonder? As we ponder those things and let them rise up in our souls and hearts, I feel in my own heart and soul the presence of those who are struggling in life right now, whether it be from this awful virus that stalks us every day, or the loss of income, or the weakened security of life, or the other struggles that are handed to each and every one of us. I hold in my heart, and you do too, those who are present with us in some way, whose lives are burdened. And even if they say not a word, even if we don't know their name, we know that they are treasured and that we treasure them. And so we pray that our hearts may grow large enough, like the Grinch's 3 sizes, that we might, in fact, learn to treasure more than we have before. Amen.
Our special music this morning is called The Christmas Wish and is being sung by Jim Nielsen and Kaya Malarkey, recorded in our sanctuary back in 2011. It is a simple, beautiful song, reminding us that although we haven't seen the Christmas star, its light shines, and we hope it can bring peace. The Christmas Wish.
I don't know if you believe in Christmas or have presents underneath the Christmas tree. But if you believe in love, That will be more than enough for you to come and celebrate with me.
For I have held the precious gift that love brings, even though I never saw a Christmas star. I know there is a light, I have felt it burn inside, and I have seen it shining from afar.
Christmas is the time to come together, a time to put all differences aside.
And I reach out my hand to the family of men to share the joy I feel at Christmas time.
For the truth that binds us all together, I would like to say a simple prayer, that at this special time you will have true peace of mind and love to last throughout the coming year.
And if you believe in love, that will be more than enough for peace to last throughout the coming year. And peace on earth will last throughout the year.
So you remember how I told you some weeks ago that I make a lot of mistakes. That's one of my gifts. Well, I obviously made a big one because part of my prayer, at least, was not available because I didn't unmute myself I'm sorry, there are just too many things to remember for my feeble mind to get a hold of all of them. So I apologize for that. But what I was asking in that prayerful moment were two things. That you ask, what is your heart's treasure? We may not even realize what's precious to us until it's threatened. But I want you to ask yourself, what is it our heart's treasure? And like the story in the scripture, be prepared to sell everything you have to buy the pearl of great price once you know that it is worth the most for you. I also added a word of pastoral care to those who are present in our virtual service, but especially present in our hearts, who are dealing with the struggles of the times, whether it be the virus that stalks us all, an illness that is your own private burden, the insecurity of uncertain jobs, of age, of separated families. Whatever it is that you carry that is a weight, what I believe Mary Oliver called the thorn that is in your heart, that lands in your heart like lead. You are present to us, to me, and that you are precious, even in your struggle. And now for my message. Some years ago, I saw a picture in the paper that was really quite interesting. It showed a gathering of Jewish leaders, rabbis and others in Israel. They were protesting something, and what they were protesting was an archaeological dig. Now, virtually everything in the land of Israel and Palestine is ancient and precious to someone. And even though the Jews who lived there 2,000 years ago would seem to be far, far away in time, to the folks who were there at the time, this dig was particularly precious because they had unearthed the graves, the bones of the Hasmonean rulers who had prevailed in the first centuries before Jesus and into the first century after. It's hard to imagine why anyone would protest something that old, but we live here in Arizona And we have experienced the native communities reminding us that their ancestors are precious to them and so are their bones. To disturb them here or there felt as personal as going through one's dresser drawers, perhaps. What we may not have realized then was the history that gave that so much meaning for them. Those people, the Hasmoneans, were those who managed to vanquish the Greeks in the 2nd century before the Common Era. The Greeks who had settled and taken over Syria had come down into the land we call Palestine and Israel. And they tried to make them more Greek, and they told them to stop circumcising their male children and to eat more pigs, and of course that they should worship the Greek gods in their temple and oblige them to do so, which was horrifying to the people there. After putting up with this for a very long time, people in the remote hills started fighting the Greeks, a guerrilla war, perhaps the first we know about. These warriors were outnumbered by the Greek army, and it seemed impossible that they could win, but they actually did. Many thought this was a miracle, and some even said that when the Jews reclaimed their temple after all the years, though there was only oil enough to light the sacred lampstands for a day, it managed to last for 8 full days until more could be brought and sanctified. Hence the holiday of Hanukkah, which just ended on Friday. Now, when we hear about miracles, we tend to be a little skeptical and think someone's trying to pull a fast one over on us. But we should see that sometimes miracles are really more like fish stories. They're exaggerations, not to deceive, but to express emotions. Sometimes the only way to convey how happy, how important, how thrilling, how scary something is to exaggerate a little. So the fish on the hook gets a little longer, the jump shot is a little further away, the bully you defeated was a little bigger, the teacher who gave you an A was tougher than the ones that came after her. But whatever really happened, they did actually win. And the Jews reclaimed their land, their freedom, and their faith. And it was these people whom the Jews in Israel were protesting that they should not be disturbed. But what is often not said, and something they knew, is that these Hasmoneans were not gods themselves. They were far less than perfect. Over time, they got complacent, and less than 200 years later, they were upset by the Romans, and again, the people in the hills took up the sword to win back their freedom. And in the year 132 in the Common Era, 300 years after the Hasmoneans had prevailed, they fell again, because that's when the last great rebellion began, and the Romans demolished the temple and the city and banished the Jews from Palestine itself. What you need to know is the man who led that rebellion was a man called Simon Bar Kokhba, Simon, son of a star. Stars are powerful images. We like them a lot, but they have more than one meaning. So let's go to that text that Eleanor Fargen has given us for the last 2 weeks. And here's the 3rd verse of that hymn, and we will sing it at the end of our worship. Stars, keep your watch, though night is dim, one more light the bowl shall brim. Shining beyond the frosty weather, bright as sun and moon together. People look east and sing today. Love, the star is on the way. This final verse is clearly a reference to the star in the east, the one seen by the Magi, the wise men, the one that is part of the story that attaches to the nativity of Jesus. But we just passed the observance of Hanukkah, as I mentioned, and that was the beginning of the struggle for Jewish identity that came to that tragic end with Simon Bar Kokhba, and that in itself became the beginning of the dispersion of the Jews throughout the world. And I want to observe a curious similarity between Hanukkah and Christmas. Not that they're anything alike, it's more subtle than that. Both of them are stories that begin with miracles of hope and end in tragedy. Look at the Christmas story as told by Matthew. That's the one where the wise men see the star. And it starts with all those big gats, which are boring as blazes, but they exist to show that Jesus was a descendant of the house and lineage of David, which is important because when the wise men arrive in Jerusalem, they are seeking the newborn king of the Jews, who was of the house and lineage of David. But at that time, the king of the Jews was a fellow named Herod, who was anything but of the house and lineage of David. He was barely Jewish, and he was entirely insane. And so he goes to the soothsayers, King Herod does, to figure out where this new king was to be born. And he sends the wise men and say, and when you're done, come back and tell me where he is so I may worship him as well. We know he's lying. Because the next part of that story, the part we never tell, especially at Christmas, is that Herod sends soldiers to slaughter all the male children under 2 years old. We don't like admitting that the nativity of Jesus is the cause of mass murder in this story, but that is what the story says. And even that baby who did escape will come to a bad end, executed as a criminal, condemned by one of the descendants of the same king who sought to kill him. So yes, I am harshing on your Christmas mellows, to use an outdated phrase. That's just what a Grinch would do, of course, and of all years, shouldn't I be more merry than that? Just when we need a little Christmas right this very minute, but we need the whole story to understand the parts. What we need is not the bells and the reindeer and the merriment alone. We need the star and all that it means. We need something like a star. And yes, I am referring to a poem by Robert Frost, which have always been favorites among Unitarian Universalists. I'm betting your choir has sung the one called Choose Something Like a Star at least once. Here's part of the text, and I think it's important. So when at times the mob is swayed to carry praise or blame too far, we may take something like a star to stay our minds on and be stayed. It's a great image. Stars are lofty, steady. They help us steer rightly at night like a sailor. That's what people saw in Simon, son of the star. That's why they called him that. He shone brightly like a star. He was worth following. His zeal and fervency convinced them he was the Messiah. They were wrong. Nothing is more attractive than self-confidence, we have been told. But what if self-confidence leads you to destruction? Can a person be a genuine star in the sense that we can stay our minds on and be stayed? Can we trust a person that much? Well, sadly, history is liberally sprinkled with lots of confident men, and I do mean men, who have charmed people with their self-confidence. We have seen it ourselves more than once in our history. We have seen it recently in the last 4 years in a president whose brash self-confidence covered up a total absence of moral compass, or at least a compass that pointed only to himself. But nonetheless, millions mistook that brashness, that self-confidence for courage, and still think him a star by which they can stay their minds on. But he and those like him are not stars. They are quite literally planets, because you see the word planet comes from the Greek word planetes, which means wanderer. They move around. That's what the ancients discovered. Some of those points of light tended to move around in the sky. And that was important because if you're a sailor, you don't want to put your course connected to Venus or Jupiter or Mars, or you don't know where you're going to land. Being able to tell a literal star from a literal planet is a very important thing. And being able to tell a figurative star from a figurative planet is just as important. Now, I cannot point to Jupiter in the sky, although I understand it and Saturn will be in very close company tomorrow. I can tell a star from a planet here on Earth. One need only study the wisdom of ancients like Lao Tzu, the politics of Aristotle, the laws of Manu, or even the Psalms in the Bible to learn the difference between a true star worth steering by and a planet that will lead you astray. I happened to be in the Andes when I learned the result of the 2016 election. And what came to mind as I learned was a verse from the book of Psalms. Yes, this UU minister knows the Psalms and likes them a bunch because this verse came to mind. It's from Psalm 146. Put not your trust in princes, nor in the sons of men in whom there is no help. They breathe their last, they go to their dust, and their thoughts die with them. In other words, do not trust human leaders. They will lead you astray. Well, whether it's a psalm or the wisdom of the Tao, the Upanishads in India, or the Grove of Academe in Athens, these ancient stories tell us the truth is always something we are seeking for, but we almost never get the whole thing. Even when it is proclaimed to be this or that God, this or that book, we know that it is more than that. Further, it is larger than a person or a book or a nation. For people like us, we say the star is unnameable, and you're right, the star has no name. That's when religious liberals like us align with the ancients. We are still in the search for the star of truth, with a big capital T truth, because we know it's bigger than any book or religion or person or nation. Yes, we want only the naked truth. We don't want any clothing to obscure it. We're above all that being distracted by myths and legends. But then Frost reminds us of what the truth really entails. Say something to us we can learn by heart, he says in the poem. And when alone we can repeat. Say something, we ask of the star. And it says, I burn. That is truth with a capital T. It burns. Like a real star, it burns white hot and is unapproachable. Many of us know that passage from that movie, A Few Good Men, where Tom Cruise's character berates Jack Nicholson's character, Colonel Jessup, and Tom Cruise demands, tell me the truth. And Colonel Jessup famously shouts, you can't handle the truth. Well, in a strict sense, he's right. We can't handle the truth. That is to say, grasp it. But of course, in the movie, Jessup thinks he can. And because he thought he could handle the truth, he became a murderer. Because none of us can handle the truth. The truth handles us. Like a star, it burns, and those who try to come close are consumed by it. Even we who scruple the myths and stories cannot behold the pure truth any more than Moses could see Yahweh or Arjuna could see Krishna. So even we need something to clothe the truth, to contain its consuming light, lest we be blinded and consumed by it ourselves. The challenge for us, for all, is to see the clothing as clothing and not to mistake the vessel for the contents. And I think that may be the ultimate spiritual challenge. In the Indian Upanishads, they teach by negation, saying, no, it isn't this, and no, it isn't that, and no, it isn't that. In the Bible, Elijah confronts God and sees a storm and an earthquake and a fire and realizes those are not God. And the Buddha taught over and over again that what we think is true is illusory, that the truth lies behind, beneath, and beyond what appears to be the truth. They are all telling us not to mistake appearance for reality. Not that appearance is false, but that it is just a part of a much greater whole. Now, again, as I do each week, and I'm sure you are already aware of this, I lead you out to the edge of some precipice, to the windswept cliffs of uncertainty and ambiguity, and now I have to explain why this matters and how it affects you here and now. Well, to say we live in ambiguous times is, well, it's obvious. That fact is what many right now cannot handle: ambiguity, uncertainty. And that is what drives so many to seek certainty and even to find it where it does not exist. I understand the urge, I feel it myself. But unlike those who offer certainty, be they preachers or presidents, I know that we cannot banish ambiguity by declaration, by simply claiming to be certain. That is a deceit of others and oneself. In technical theological terms, it is called idolatry, worshiping the false as the true. But if we cannot see the truth itself, being as far from it as the stars above, we can nonetheless, if we can point ourselves toward it, it can steer us closer. So the question is how to tell the star of truth from the wandering planets of mere confidence and certainty. And that's what spiritual communities are for. None of us has enough wisdom or knowledge to know which star is the star of truth. But together, with the wisdom of our ancestors and the experience of our neighbors, we can rule out the false stars. We can name the wanderers. We can notice the waverers. We can come to see that truth is not in the mighty acts or the thrilling words, not in power and privilege, but in what Dr. King called the network of mutuality, the single garment of destiny. And now I'm going to quote an old Christian hymn, and you're going to wonder why. Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love. The fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above. Is that not who we are truly? Fellowship of kindred minds, tied by love. The hymn says, we share our mutual woes, our mutual burdens bear, and often for each other flows the sympathizing tear. The community of care, of affection, of love is what leads us toward the greater truth that we all seek. Love is the garment of truth. Where we see not love, there cannot be truth. It is the tie that not only binds us one to another in this community, it ties us to ancestors and descendants, and it reminds us that none of us will get to the truth alone, and that a truth without love is a lie in some sort of sheep's clothing. You might say that the Unitarian part of us is the one committed to the star of truth. We even have hymns, "O Star of Truth Down Shining." They're great hymns. Because we know in the end there's only one truth and it encompasses all. But if we would know that truth better, we can only get to it together, which means we must be connected together. And that's where being the universalist comes in and is in fact the more important of the two. Because if we would find the star of truth, we must first follow the star of love. Because love will lead us to truth. And it's the only way to truth. So, the message that love the star is our star. It is that which calls us onward. Toward truth, yes, but always in love. Shining beyond the frosty weather, bright as sun and moon together. May it be. And now I'd love you I implore you to sing along the same song we've heard for the last 2 weeks and sing together, People Look East, with our own performers, Jim Nielsen, Jillian Kong Sievert, Hugh McCutcheon, Linda Horton on the piano, thanks to a video production by Izzy Hyman. Let's sing together.
People look east, the time is near, of the crowning of the year. Make your house fair as you are able, trim the hearth and set the table. People look east and sing today, love the guest is on the way. Girls, be glad no earth is bare. One more seed is planted there. Give up your strength, the seed to nourish, that in course the flower may flourish. People look east and sing today. Love the rose is on the way. Stars keep the watch when night is dim. One more light the bowl shall brim, shining beyond the frosty weather, bright as sun and moon together. People look east and sing today. Love, the star is on the way.
And now these words by Frederick Gillis, the late colleague of mine, who said, "May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, may that love be in us and among us today and in the days to come, until we meet again, even forevermore." Amen. Rebecca?
Please join me in saying our chalice extinguishing words. Though we extinguish the chalice, our connection to each other and this community remains. May its light guide us this week as we walk the path of justice, speak words of love, and fill our world with compassion until we meet again. For those who need to leave us now, have a wonderful Christmas. We hope to see some of you on Christmas Eve at 5 o'clock and all of you next Sunday. For those who can stay a while longer, you'll be asked to join one of our breakout groups in just a few minutes, where you can visit with a few others in our community. And for visitors, just stay right where you are. And finally, a reminder of the question for today. Do you have a star that you steer by? Merry Christmas, everyone. Go in peace.